All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys on election week. I can't believe it's Friday night. It feels like it's Tuesday and I've lived the longest day of my life. I'm gonna give you updates here on where we are. But you know, we got on here, first of all, I got on at 6 in the morning here on the West Coast. Then we got on here all together, me and John, then me and Anna at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And we told you all the relevant news of the day. And then the news stopped as soon as we got off air. I don't know if they were trying to do us a favor. And the news is about to pick back up because Biden is gonna speak soon. And there's some chance that now that we're getting close to prime time, the ratings will be high enough for the networks to call this election, which I called at 6 a.m. Pacific, because there's overwhelming evidence that it is over. So I don't know if they're waiting because they're cowards and worried about what Trump's gonna say about them, or if they're waiting because they just wanna get more money by going in prime time. We deliver the news to you when we have the news and not when it's convenient or to Republicans or to corporate media. So Decision Desk HQ also called it in the mornings about the same time that I did. And now look, guys, I was clear with you in the morning, I'll be clear here. We don't have a room full of statisticians in the back, so I'm not saying my call is an official call, etc. right? But so what am I basing it on? Let me be, and I'll clarify in terms of where we are right now. There's 4 states that are at play here. North Carolina hasn't moved at all. I don't know what they're doing. They're leaning Trump, so nobody talks about North Carolina. Alaska apparently is gonna take however long they're gonna take, it doesn't matter. It's very, very, very likely Trump, right? So if they're Trump, it doesn't matter because Trump has to pick up almost all of these states, right? So the 4 relevant states, and I'll go in order for you guys. We have Georgia. In the morning, Biden took a lead in Georgia. He has maintained and grown that lead. In fact, as it stands now, it's at 4,185 votes. Now that's not a lot, and so they haven't done counting. We don't know if Biden's lead will be larger by the end. It's mainly Democratic districts, but there's some military ballots as well. So the Trump team has asked for a recount there, and then the government of Georgia, which is all Republican, governor, legislature, etc., say they're going to do a recount, no problem. Okay, we believe in recounts. We're not hypocrites. We're principled about it. You could announce who won the count, and then we could have a recount, and nothing wrong with that. But they're not even saying that. Well, you know, we're gonna have a recount of who won. So who won? I don't know. Oh, what do you mean you don't know? Biden has a 4,000 vote lead. Okay, I'm going in order of priority. Okay, and Georgia's at the bottom. So Biden very likely won Georgia. He won. It looks like he won the first count. We'll see if there's a recount. Then you go to Arizona. Okay, Arizona, there was outstanding Republican districts, so we weren't sure. A lot of those came in. They didn't come in for Trump in large enough numbers to overcome Biden's lead. So every person on air agrees Arizona is gonna go to Biden. The networks say, I'll give the exception of Fox News, who called it immediately, and Associated Press, who also called it what feels like years ago. And Associated Press is, the oldest and most trusted news establishment in the country. Everybody else is like, I don't know, but Trump yelled at Fox News a lot, so we're not gonna call that one. Okay, if you wanna stretch and say, well, there's still Republican counties, maybe some sort of miraculous percentages could happen in those areas, fine. Although again, I don't know what's taking so long in each one of these states to do a simple count. All right, then we move up to Nevada. There's only heavily Democratic districts left, and Biden has a very comfortable 1.6 lead. It's over a 20,000 vote lead in Nevada. There's no question that Biden has won Nevada. No one disputes that Biden has won Nevada. Still not calling it. What earthly reason is there not to call Nevada? So I hope they make more money in prime time or whatever their motive is. If they think they're gonna appease Trump, the longer you wait, the more Trump gets to say, oh, it's in doubt. It's in doubt and fraud and this, and I got to take it to the courts. Look, even the networks wouldn't call it. They weren't sure. What's there not to be sure about? So, and then, guys, it's publicly available, the areas that are not yet in with their full count. They're heavily Democratic areas. He has a 1.6% lead. There's no magic to it, okay? There's no secret ballots waiting somewhere. There are no Democratic areas, Democratically heavy areas anywhere in the country that have magically gone for Trump. All right, let's continue to Pennsylvania. To Pennsylvania. So Biden took the lead there this morning. He has built on that lead, and now he has over 14,000 vote lead with 96% reporting. The remaining areas are heavily Democratic. They're so heavily Democratic that the Republicans are complaining that they're continuing to count in those areas. So where are your areas that are going to come in the last 4% and overturn the lead? In fact, you were just chanting stop the count in Pennsylvania earlier. So do you want him to stop the count? Because now Biden's leading. Oh no, you don't want him to stop the count. You want the count to keep going. In fact, including in Pennsylvania, they want to recount. They went from stop the count to keep counting to count twice, okay? And yet the networks have still not called it. So if they have a good reason, and now they're setting out their guys like Kornacki to, look, what it feels like to me is to pretend there's a legitimate reason to wait, which then doubly helps Trump's cause on MSNBC. I would never, ever tell them to say that it's true if it's not true, or if they're not sure that it's not true. But when you're weirdly defending Trump for no reason, when every expert says it's obviously over, there's something wrong with you. So you should explain what's wrong with you. Anyway, so that's why we started the day jubilant, and now we're frustrated. So, but don't worry, guys, we're almost in prime time. So, and if Biden's going to speak, he might wait for the networks to call it and then speak, and then you'll have a nice TV moment. I can't say for sure why they're holding. I'm not in their decision desk headquarters in these different networks, but I've never seen an election, Republican or Democrat, where someone has a lead, only areas left are for their party, and they don't call it. I've never seen it.
Do you think that they're just trying to, as much as possible, postpone the inevitable violence that will be done by Trump supporters? I don't get it either, to be honest.
I don't know what that means. They say, oh, we want to be doubly sure. Well, how many times? It was when we got off the air this morning. That was on the Pacific time. Was around 9:40, right? So now here we are, Pacific time, 3:10ish, right? So you've had hours and hours and hours to redo the math. You must have quadruple checked it by now. So what are we missing? Then we're not missing anything. And waiting does not help if you're concerned about violence. It makes it worse. Now we're gonna go to nighttime with these lunatics roaming around. We're gonna tell you a story a little bit later about how some terrorists showed up for Trump in Philly. How long are you gonna wait? And you think you're helping? Nah. Now they're losing every excuse they have. And in the morning I was frustrated. I shared that frustration near the end of the broadcast, and that was 6-7 hours ago, right? And some people said on Twitter when I shared that on Twitter, oh, Cenk, don't be impatient. Later, Joe Scarborough's like, what are we waiting for? Even Joe Scarborough, right? And person after person, what are we waiting for? So tell us what we're waiting for. Nope, not gonna tell you. But we'll tell you when the ratings are great. I really don't know if that's why. But I can't, I'm stretching to find a real reason and I can't find it. If they have one, they should. CNN was yelling at Fox News this morning. You better get your anchors to say that Joe Biden won the election, Well, wait, you're not saying Joe Biden won the election. What the hell are you talking about? So, and they've given no explanation at all. So anyway, that's the current state in terms of the vote and the unwillingness of the media for some reason, or most of the media, to admit the super obvious. But we do have a show that is both fun at times, as you'll see. It actually is two of my favorite political quotes of all time just happened. They're awesome and hilarious. One is from a Democrat, one's from a Republican. You'll enjoy those. And then obviously we have serious stories like this. And I wish I had more updates for you. I'll give you one last update because the updates are so tiny. And by the way, I also, for Pennsylvania and Arizona, etc., like you were reporting all these counts throughout the night and throughout the morning. There's no court order for you to not count. I just don't understand, and they're not giving any explanations. I'm checking the news every day, every minute, right? So what is the explanation for a magical 7-hour pause for vote results or for calling this election? So what I'm worried about, guys, is that every minute we wait, the right wing becomes more convinced that there's something funny going on, that there's a trick. And every minute the Republican politicians go, maybe they're gonna let us get away with it. Maybe we should back Trump in trying to steal this election, because it turns out both Democrats, the media, and everybody, we can read the numbers. This election is over. Why aren't they calling? Maybe they're going to let us steal it. So it's such a, I don't know if it's a strategy, but if it is, it's a disastrous strategy.
It is a disastrous strategy, and I will note that people are not going to take that. If for any reason there is indication that Trump is going to try to steal this election, and it's not just stealing the election, it's a coup. If he tries to perform a coup in the United States, we will take action, nonviolent action, but it will challenge those in positions of power. ChooseDemocracy.us, ChooseDemocracy.us. There's a lot of organizing going on behind the scenes in the event that Donald Trump tries to do that, and I think people are a little more prepared this time around than anything. But let me tell you who has not been on Donald Trump's side as he spouts these unfounded claims of election fraud, rigging, stealing, all this nonsense that he has failed to provide any evidence of. That's our next story, so let's talk about it.
And I'm sorry, before you go to that, and you're right, we're gonna go to that in 1 second. I just promised a small update. Small update is when you're hearing nonsense from the Republicans about, oh my God, there's these late arriving ballots in Pennsylvania. First of all, the law in Pennsylvania is if it's postmarked by November 3rd, you're allowed to receive them after November 3rd. And that already went through the whole court system, and the Supreme Court said it's fine. But even so, they have put those ballots aside. It is not in the current count. So they've gone out of their way to not report those numbers. So don't believe any Republican lies about that. Okay, that's your small update. And let's go to and in fact, we'll talk about some of that in the court's story you're about to do.
Well, as Donald Trump handcuffs himself to the Resolute desk and pretends as though there was election fraud, which led to Joe Biden winning over Trump. Of course, that's unfounded, no evidence of that. Luckily, there have been some Republicans who have come out to essentially disagree with Trump and say that there's no evidence of election fraud. So let me be clear. We've announced here at TYT that Joe Biden is the president-elect. He has won this election fair and square. And here is what Representative Adam Kinzinger had to say about it. He says, if you have legit concerns about fraud, present evidence and take it to court. Stop spreading debunked misinformation. This is getting insane. He's not the only one. You also have Governor Larry Hogan, who's a Republican from Maryland. He says there's no defense for the president's comments tonight, undermining our democratic process. And Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, who is also a Republican, of course, says Trump is wrong to say the election was rigged, corrupt, and stolen. Trump's claim damages the cause of freedom here and around the world and recklessly inflames destructive and dangerous passions. And Senator Pat Toomey says there's simply no evidence anyone has shown me of any widespread corruption or fraud. The president's speech last night was very disturbing to me because he made very, very serious allegations without any evidence to support it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Republicans who are defending Trump and his ridiculous allegations. In fact, let's take a look at this mashup.
The worst in the country right now is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they're not allowing the election observers in.
There's the process of observing an election that's being violated. Philadelphia elections are crooked as a snake. Why are they shutting people out? Because they don't want people to see what they're doing.
There's a reason they're defying the law. The reason you don't want observers there is because you're doing something you don't want to be observed.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet.
The Attorney General this afternoon issued an order that federal agents could carry guns in the pursuit of people who are breaking the law. That's a signal.
They did it, and they violated the law. Nobody can testify to the legitimacy of what their counting was. Oh, what, a do-over in that state?
It is partisan, it is political, and it is lawless. And we're seeing this pattern in Democratic city after Democratic city.
They don't abide by the law, and they don't allow observers in as the law calls for. Should they then invalidate this?
Well, I think everything should be on the table.
You take them back. You say
back?
Flatly, any precinct that we were not able to observe, strip those votes out, do not count them, because they're by definition corrupt.
All right, very powerful.
No, not very powerful, very unhinged, an absolute lunatic, someone who has completely lost his mind. I'm referring to Newt Gingrich's comments there, which Sean Hannity thinks are very powerful. The lawsuits that the Trump campaign have filed are so frivolous and so ridiculous that federal judges who were appointed by Republicans are getting increasingly frustrated and irritable by the situation. I want to highlight one specific example, and there are many to be sure. So a federal judge in Pennsylvania where Trump holds an increasingly, well, at this point was an increasingly small lead, dismissed a Trump campaign lawsuit alleging that Philadelphia officials are not allowing Republican election observers sufficient access during the ballot tabulation process. When Judge Paul Diamond of the U.S. District Court of Pennsylvania pressed a Trump campaign lawyer on whether Republican observers are currently present at the counting site, the attorney responded, get a load of this, there's a non-zero number of people in the room.
I love it.
Asked once more to provide a clear answer, the Trump campaign attorney said yes. I'm sorry, Diamond responded. Then what's your problem?
No, guys, that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. There's a non-zero number of people in the room.
Unbelievable.
So look, I want to break this down for you guys. So first they came with nonsense. Oh, there's wagons, there's sacks, there's Sharpies. They're just throwing out random words. Every one of those has been debunked, so they stopped talking about them because it just got embarrassing. It's not remotely true. The Republicans stopped talking about it. Louis Gohmert interviewed today, partly by Michael Schur, partly by JD Durkin, two different interviews, asked, okay, what is your evidence of fraud? You're down here in Philly, you're talking about fraud. He said, well, I don't have any, but in past elections, there's been fraud. Wait, what does that have to do with this election, even if it were true? He's like, well, you're living in a Pollyanna world. Wait, you're the one who just said there was fraud, and when I asked you what the evidence is, you gave me none. That sounds like a Pollyanna world. Okay, so they started with that. Now, their only claim, really, that's outstanding is this one. And it's not outstanding, the court's already ruled on it. And their claim was, we're not getting meaningful access. You remember this from days ago. And as soon as I saw that phrase, I told you guys on air, wait, that means they do have access. Meaningful access is not a thing. They put that adjective in there to make it sound like they're not in the room. Then Sean Hannity came on the air and lied through his teeth all last night. Those were some of the interviews that you saw there. In the longer versions of the interviews, he kept saying like, they won't allow the Republican observers in the room. They won't allow them. You got to throw, and that's why they're talking about a redo. He wants to redo the entire election in Pennsylvania because Republican observers were not in the room. That is why the judge asked, so were there Republican observers in the room? That's when the lawyer says there's a non-zero number of people in the room. And he's like, yeah, so that means they're in the room. He's like, yes. I told you, of course there's observers in the room. Then they got more desperate. They're like, well, yeah, fine, there's non-zero people in the room, but are they close enough? So they're 25 feet away, we want them to be 6 feet away. The first judge that saw it was like, Okay, fine. What difference does it make? Put them 6 feet within the ballots. It doesn't matter. They're like, plus we want binoculars. Oh, all right. So then the court above them was like, no, that's not a law that you have to be 6 feet. They're in the room. It's okay. Proceed. Count. Let's go. Right. And for us, me, you, anyone who cares about the elections, 6 feet, 25 feet, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Can they see the ballots? They can see the ballots. By the way, it's not like the Democrats are 1 foot away and the Republicans are 25 feet away. They're both at the same place. So no. I want 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet. So they're in the room. There's no question about it. So when you see Sean Hannity saying that there weren't Republican observers, it is a 100% lie, and he knows he's lying, and Fox News knows he's lying, and Ted Cruz knows he's lying, and Lindsey Graham and Newt Gingrich, they all know that they're lying, and they do it anyway, and they rile up their idiotic viewers who eat that stuff up. Oh, they won't they cheated. They wouldn't let the Republicans in the room. We gotta go to Philly. And now, of course, they caught somebody who went to Philly with weapons, okay? And so that's what Fox News is up to. Their reporters every once in a while say it before they get the memo to stop talking and saying facts. But on the ground in Philly, Fox News reporter said there is absolutely no evidence of fraud that has been presented by anyone. And then at night, Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity come on and they're like, oh, fraud! And then they lie. These court proceedings are not secret. They're not private. They're public. You can go read for yourself what was said in the court. And so the reality is there has been no allegation of actual fraud.
Yeah, and to your point, Jake, I mean, you mentioned Lindsey Graham. Look, we've obviously had some pretty strong and harsh criticism against Lindsey Graham, especially since he's a sniveling, conniving, cowardly, feckless, self-interested narcissist who is willing to put our democratic process on the line for his own political agenda and political aspirations. But he has completely latched onto whatever messaging the Trump campaign demands of him. That was after he decided to remain silent in the beginning when Trump started claiming that there was electoral fraud happening. And now take a look at how absolutely disgusting and pathetic his messaging is after getting pressured by lowlives like Don Jr. to go along with their messaging. Watch.
I'm going to donate $500,000 tonight to President Trump's defense legal fund, so we'll have the resources to fight. The allegations of wrongdoing are earth-shattering. It makes the Carter Page warrant application look on the up and up.
Loser. Absolute pathetic loser.
Earth-shattering. He said earth-shattering. The allegations of being 7 feet instead of 8 feet away, it's earth-shattering. What an unbelievable liar. Lindsey Graham is exactly why people despise politicians. So now look, you look at every single thing that they tried. In every case, it's comical. In Georgia, they're like, oh, this is an outrageous thing that they're doing. How many votes does it affect? By the way, it's not, and the court said no. How many? 53 votes. Okay, even if it were true, it would be entirely irrelevant. All of these elections are decided by thousands of votes. So they have absolutely nothing. And the longer these networks wait to call it, the more it seems like it's a legitimate question as to whether there's something wrong going on.
I mean, even the New York Post has the right take on what's going on right now. Let me give you two headlines. Headline number one, Donald Trump Jr. calls for total war in clueless tweet. Headline number two, downcast Trump makes baseless election fraud claims in White House address. It's amazing. It's amazing when even the New York Post is better than Lindsey Graham, and that's saying something. And with that said, look, what is of course, Trump wants to try to steal this election, right? But what is the impact of the kind of rhetoric we're hearing from Trump and his loyalists? Well, it leads to violence. It leads to the supporters showing up to vote counting locations with the intention of intimidating people, with the intention of stopping the count. And here's an example out of Pennsylvania. apologies, that video is actually from Michigan, but there was a foiled terrorist plot in Philly just last night, where two QAnon supporters, QAnon believers, were showing up to a vote counting location, armed, and luckily the authorities were able to arrest them before something serious happened. We'll give you more details on that story later in the show. But it has real consequences. That's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, so that in Michigan, they were chanting "Stop the Count," as you saw there. Later, they pleaded with Michigan to keep counting when Biden took the lead in Michigan. So in Pennsylvania, it got more absurd. They said, "Stop the count, stop the count." Biden took the lead. They're like, "Keep counting, keep counting." It's a joke. I mean, they're a joke, but it got worse. How could it get worse? Now they're saying we need a recount of Pennsylvania. So now they're chanting, "Count twice, count twice." Okay, they're not actually, to be accurate, they didn't send the supporters back out there to chant "count twice." They might have reached a threshold of absurdity, but that is their contention in court. And what's great, and that's why Jonathan Turley, who's a legal expert supporting Donald Trump, supported him in his impeachment testimony, came out this morning. He's like, "You're ruining your case because now you're going to go to court and tell them to do you're going to ask for a recount. But earlier you went to court and asked them to stop counting. So they're going to ask you, which one is it, Mr. Trump? Do you want them to stop counting? Do you want them to keep counting? Or do you want them to count twice? Please make up your mind." Gee, I wonder who's right and who's wrong. Gee, I wonder who won and who lost. And it's just humoring Republicans is unacceptable. You have to call out lies for what they are, and that is clearly what's going on here. Because guys, the most dangerous thing that's still left on the table is leaving a question mark around this election for no reason when Biden has clearly won Pennsylvania and Nevada at a bare minimum. And then the right wing starts nonsense like, "Oh, there's fraud," or et cetera, and all the things that we just explained to you. And then as soon as there's an issue, the way the cable news drives the rest of the news is, well, now we're debating it. Now MSNBC says this and Fox News says that. And all of a sudden it's debatable. And the minute it becomes debatable, the Republicans win the debate because the Democrats cower, the media cowers. And I'm worried that we're in the middle of that now. So for God's sake, just have clarity. Yeah. And so it doesn't take much. I mean, why isn't every network reading the same things that we just read you? Where Republican lawyers say there's a non-zero number of people in the room. Why aren't they showing a clip of Sean Hannity pretending there wasn't Republicans in the room and then playing that quote and calling Sean Hannity what he is, a liar? They're afraid and they're worried about Republican reaction. That is political correctness. That is not factual correctness. Do your job.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, I'll give you the details on that foiled plot by Trump supporters at a vote counting location. So come right back. More details on that and more.
Imagine that our democracy is a dashboard. The way it's going right now, lights are flashing, alarms are blaring, warning us that it's time to check our systems. Well, that's why I wanted to tell you about the latest podcast from The Nation called System Check. Hosts Melissa Harris Perry and Dorian Warren sit down to diagnose and repair our malfunctioning political system. System Check is a weekly show that asks, what would it be like to break free from the oppressive systems that are holding us down? And it's unapologetically rooted in progressive Black culture and politics. From the movement for Black lives to the fight for climate justice, from the unjust immigration regime to the unfinished voting rights struggle, Dorian and Melissa want to know, how are you living in, working around, smashing through, or recreating the systems that shape your life? I know you'll enjoy System Check too, so don't wait. Subscribe to System Check on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes every Friday.
Get a chance, okay? All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. So we've got a lot of stories for you, obviously, with the election happening now, and no updates on the vote count since we last shared it with you. And we do have an update. Biden's going to speak at 8 o'clock Eastern. So we'll see if the networks decide to call it right before then. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. So we actually have more news on why they're not calling it in a little bit. So let's get to it. Anna, what's next?
All right. Trump supporters in the Democratic stronghold of Philadelphia were caught plotting to attack a voting site as Trump lost his lead to Joe Biden. Now, of course, Donald Trump and his campaign have repeatedly claimed that this election was filled with all sorts of voter fraud, although they failed to provide any specific evidence or examples of that voter fraud. However, that messaging does unfortunately influence the lunatic QAnon supporters who believe that Donald Trump is this country's rightful leader. And so 2 of them were arrested after police received a tip about an apparent threat to attack a vote counting center in Philadelphia on Thursday night. So here's how it all went down based on the reporting that we have at the moment. Law enforcement told local media it received a tip at 10 p.m. that a group of people, possibly a family, was traveling from Virginia in a silver Hummer to carry out an attack on the Philadelphia Convention Center. 2 bicycle officers approached the men. Each man was carrying a firearm, and another weapon was found in that Hummer, in that vehicle, which they admitted does belong to them. A search revealed the men didn't have a license to carry a firearm in Pennsylvania, so each man was arrested. Let me be clear, these are people who don't even live in Philadelphia. They traveled from Virginia to Philadelphia to attempt to carry out this terrorist attack. This is what terrorists do in dictatorial regimes. And the identities of the 2 men have just been released and reported by the Washington Post. One of the men is in his 40s, the other one is in his 60s, but it doesn't matter. What matters here is that these are QAnon conspiracy theorists who support Trump, who believe the nonsense that's coming out of Trump's mouth. Ronna McDaniel, the head of the RNC today, held a press conference claiming that a whistleblower came out and informed them that there was fraud taking place. Again, these are claims that should go through the courts. And to be absolutely clear, some of these accusations have already been heard by federal judges who are growing increasingly irritable by the nonsense that they're bringing forward with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. In one of the cases in Philadelphia, a Trump campaign lawyer argued that the poll workers in Philadelphia are not allowing them to watch as they tabulate. And when the judge asked, okay, well, are there any people from the campaign, any Republicans watching the poll workers? They said that there was non-zero people there watching. And the judge asked for clarification, and finally the lawyer had to admit that, yeah, we actually did have someone watching. And so the judge is like, well, then what's your problem? Why are you here?
So it's not just Donald Trump. We told you earlier in the show about Sean Hannity pushing out total lies and conspiracy theories. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Newt Gingrich, they're all on there. They're all talking about fraud that does not exist. Every story we've already debunked. And they full well know that they're lying and they're doing it. And then Louis Gohmert. So Louis Gohmert's asked by J.D. Durkin at Cheddar, do you have any evidence of fraud? He says no, but there might have been in past elections. So that's why it's so important that we tell you that there's fraud here. Okay, then Michael Schur asks Louis Gohmert, so what do you think is happening here?
So Cenk, not to interrupt you, but we actually have that video if you'd like to go to it right now.
Yeah, let's watch the J.D. Durkin one, and then the Michael Schur one is even worse. But let's watch this first.
What is the allegation of fraud? Have you seen the evidence?
You can have different kinds of evidence, and when somebody says, I voted and my vote was not counted, and here are the names of lots of other people that voted for Trump and their votes were not being counted, you got a problem. But that's not all.
Have you seen any of that evidence yourself?
I'm hearing about the evidence from people that have. So anyway.
Is it concerning at all to sort of fan the flames of this argument that there's fraud happening without you yourself, an elected member of Congress, having seen that fraud?
We need the proof shown in court. But obviously, you're in a Pollyanna world and you don't see the destruction of this little exercise of freedom.
I mean, I don't have the evidence, but you live in a Pollyanna world. And so fanning the flames. And Michael Schur, in this case, was reporting for WGN. They haven't aired it yet, but I know with certainty from not only Michael, but from the network that Gohmert said, I blame Black Lives Matter and Antifa. What's he talking? Blame them for what? You haven't even presented any evidence. I blame them for a non-specific fraud because they're black people. It's a racism 101 to blame black people for crimes they didn't commit, and in this case, that don't even exist. And lo and behold, look at that. Domestic terrorists show up to start shooting people. Hey, I don't know, I was just egging people on. It's called stochastic terrorism. I didn't ask Bob to show up. I just said, there's something terrible going on here. They're stealing something from you. You might want to do something about it. And remember your Second Amendment rights and all that rhetoric that the Republicans and the right wing normally use. And now you spray in, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, there's fraud, go get them. And lo and behold, a van full of QAnon people show up.
Yeah.
Super dangerous.
Yeah, and so how do we know they're QAnon people? I think it's important to be clear about that. Video footage of the vehicle, the Hummer that belonged to them, showed it covered with stickers promoting the baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, as well as associated slogans such as the Great Awakening and where we go one, we go all. An American flag also hung from the back of the car. By the way, how ironic is that? An American flag as you're showing up to a location where poll workers are counting ballots and your whole intention is to harm them physically with the weapons that you're carrying. They were armed with AR-15s, by the way, if you're wondering what kind of weapons. And here are some images of what their vehicle looked like.
What they're doing to the flag is a crime, right? I don't mean a physical crime, I mean a symbolic one. I mean, Anna's 100% right. Look at the irony of that. I'm an American, so I believe we shouldn't count votes and I should murder anyone who does. No, you missed the whole point of the country. Well, I should be the one in charge and brown and black people should be underneath me, okay? You missed the whole point of the country. All men are created equal. And yes, you might have missed a couple of amendments in there somewhere. So look, these specific folks who got arrested, they'll go through the court system. We'll find out what their insane motivations were. And we'll find out why they brought AR-15s. If you're wondering why we keep calling QAnon people lunatics.
It's because they are.
Yeah, if you don't know any of those conspiracies, count yourself lucky, but I'm gonna have to tell you now so that you know that, hey, it's not like, hey, we have a political disagreement, hey, they voted for that congressman and we don't agree with that congressman, or hey, they're in favor of more deregulation and we're not, etc. No, they believe that the top Democrats in this country are running a child sex trafficking ring, and some portions of them also believe that they're using child sacrifice, having child sacrifices, and then I guess they're doing something with the blood. Do I have to keep going? And there's some sort of transfer of fluids, and that's really vital to this. I don't know if they came to stop the transfer of fluids from the child sacrifices, or if they got all riled up about the vote count and how somehow that's connected to pizza. So these are the lunatics that Donald Trump said, well, they strongly care about child molesters. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said that he wishes well for the top, most renowned, infamous child molester in the country right now, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the top aide of Jeffrey Epstein. She's under arrest, and Trump's like, I wish her well. I wish her really well. Meanwhile, these lunatics are like, the guy who says the child molester is awesome is the good guy who's trying to stop the child molesters. That's why I got to go kill someone. Okay, you see someone with a QAnon sticker or whatever, don't talk to them, just move away, leave them alone. They belong in an insane asylum, and they're likely to cause nothing but trouble because they can't form rational thoughts. By the way, QAnon also believed that Trump was and Robert Mueller initially and Trump were working in cahoots to expose these child molesters. When Robert Mueller said nothing of the sort, they didn't change their mind. When Donald Trump, after 4 years, didn't arrest anyone, in fact, the only person who was arrested, he said, I wish her well. It didn't change their mind. Why? That's why we call them lunatics. They're not attached to reality. And so when they show up with AR-15s, that is very serious. And in this case, great job by the authorities, credit where credit is due, in stopping these guys before they went in the building.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I have a breaking news story for you regarding how some of these efforts by Trump are unfortunately beginning to work. We'll be back.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys, and you as well, because you're part of this show. So let me read a couple of member comments here. Jenny Penny says the Republican legislators and many voters not only have their own perception of truth, they also have their own language. Frightening. That's right. From now on, I'm a non-zero person. Jenkins Skinny Jeans writes in, I hear Pelosi will be writing a strongly worded letter to Trump if he continues to incite chaos. Indeed. Trump is probably trembling over it. She came out earlier today and said that President-elect Biden will have a strong mandate. Okay, and everybody's like, "Ooh, she's so strong." Okay, anyway, and Seb Chick on Super Chat makes an interesting point. Right now, Trump is losing Georgia by the same number of Republicans that died in Georgia due to COVID-19. Will he ever realize his mistakes? Well, I mean, the answer to that is obvious, never. And I don't know that those two things are connected, but it's a shame how many people have died overall. By the way, we broke another record yesterday. 118,000 cases in one day, top number of cases, not just in America, but in the world. Again, with this record incompetence on coronavirus, the Democrats could barely beat Donald Trump. I want to give a shout out quickly to our Twitch audience. Yeetwood Mac gave 5 subs. Trima FM gave 5 subs. And Dutycoff 28 gave 100 subs. So thank you to all of you guys looking out for each other. And St. K's, Dutycoff 28, and The Box Life also sub themselves. And if you have Amazon Prime, by the way, it's free to do it, to have a subscription on Twitch for us, but we get the revenue anyway, so it's a win-win for everybody. And speaking of win-wins, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor, Plant Your Change. Plants trees for you guys. If you want to hook up your credit card or your debit card to this account, you go to tyt.com/trees and get the details. But basically, they round up every dollar for you. When they do, no matter how big or small those cents are, they plant a tree for you guys. So you get to feel great about helping to contribute to the solution to climate change in the world. So tyt.com/trees to check that out. And if you're signing up on YouTube by hitting the join button below, or you're signing up on Twitch or anywhere else, we try to put your names and sometimes your comments as well in the ticker below. So check that out as well. Thank you guys, you make this show possible. All right, Anna, what's next?
Flood of breaking news. So this one's a doozy. As we know, Donald Trump seems to have no interest in conceding to the fact that he lost this election. Joe Biden has won. He is the president-elect. But according to Vanity Fair, and this is a literal headline by Bess Levin, Trump plans to barricade himself in the Oval Office and refuse to come out if Biden wins. He has told those closest to him that he refuses and will not concede. Donald Trump is not reasonable and he has no dignity. So instead, he's decided he'll keep fighting this thing well beyond the point that it's hugely embarrassing to do so, writes Vanity Fair. And even after that fails, refuse to acknowledge that he lost and that Joe Biden is going to be president. Trump apparently thinks he can just go on being president, even if the American people have fired him. According to CNN, Trump reportedly has not prepared a concession speech. It's amazing. And in conversations with allies in recent days, he has said he has no intention of conceding the election. And in the meantime, the Trump campaign is playing all sorts of games in their attempt to steal this election. In fact, Zachary Cohen from CNN tweets the following, and bear with me as I read this thread. The GOP member of a vote review panel in Gwinnett, Georgia, repeatedly argued Friday that write-in ballots for Mike Pence as president should count for Donald Trump, the group's Democratic representative tells me. The GOP panel member objected 5 to 6 times when Write-in ballots for Pence were brought before the group, claiming those voters intended to vote for the Trump-Pence ticket, and therefore they should count for Trump. The argument was overruled each time, this person said. The source also tells me that the GOP review panel member in question was brought in during Friday's session to replace the original person who was serving as the party's representative. They called the swap disconcerting.
Okay, so let me comment on those one at a time. So if you bothered to write in Mike Pence, your intention was to vote for Mike Pence. It's not remotely unclear. Basically, you're saying, I'm a Republican. I like Pence, who's a good, solid right-wing evangelical Republican. I can't bear to vote for Donald Trump, who's at the top of the ticket, so I'm writing him in. Okay, but I don't have to read your intentions. Your intentions are actually irrelevant. You wrote Mike Pence. That's who you voted for. Why are they sending in guys like this? Just to gum up the works, just to delay the proceedings, challenge every single thing. It doesn't matter how absurd it is. So that's an attempt to thwart the actual results of the election. Now, to the earlier story about barricading himself in, I don't know if you got the memo, Trump, so I'll just show it to you so you're clear, okay? You're fired, okay? You're fired. That's the memo. So that's on shoptyt.com. And so, but you know what? Every time I say it, I get angrier at the networks. Biden right now, as we stand here, New York Times website has a 1.8% lead in Nevada, over 22,000 votes. The only remaining districts are Democratic districts. What are you waiting for? So the longer you wait, the more Trump gets entrenched and his supporters get entrenched. And they say, oh, well, he's taking so long, it must be super close. And if Biden wins at the end, it must have been cheating. Call it already. Everybody knows he won. Everybody knows Biden won. Let's go, right? So, but look, at the end of the day, now, unfortunately, the day is going to stretch and stretch and stretch because apparently these networks are too scared of Trump to tell you what the truth is. So what's going to happen is they got to come and actually physically remove him from the building. And I told you about this how many months ago? We even did a petition about it. I told you this guy is like, when he says that he doesn't want to, they asked him 3 different times, do you want to do a peaceful transfer of power? And he did not give a clear yes. He said, well, it depends. No, it doesn't depend. You can barricade yourself in all you want, you lunatic dictator wannabe. But at some point, the Secret Service has to come and remove you from the building and then clear out the stench. And so we can have a president that actually believes in America. Could you imagine if any of these presidents, now Obama, it doesn't make sense because he never lost an election, but if he had and he just barricaded himself inside the White House, the right wing would have surrounded the building with weapons already by now, right? And so it's not a thing in America. It's not a thing in America. For you to say, I'm not gonna leave no matter what, even if everyone says you've lost the election, means you never believed in America. Un-American, un-American, un-American.
Let me give you more from this Vanity Fair article because I mean each paragraph is more amazing than the previous one. So it is a possibility the president did not consider in a serious way during the election, despite polls showing him with only a narrow path to victory, believing that looking past election day was bad luck. The delicate matter of a loss and the potential post-presidential life was not discussed widely among his team and was not raised often with the president, who believed adamantly he would win. Now people around Trump are working to identify who might be able to communicate to him the stark reality. There has been talk of potentially Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump, though their willingness to lead a difficult intervention wasn't clear.
Now, what a baby, what a baby. Hey, let's get Ivanka. The baby listens to Ivanka. It's okay, Donnie, it's okay. I know it hurts, Donnie, I know it does. But you gotta stop crying now, Donnie. Okay, you've been crying for days and days. We gotta pack up, we gotta go, okay? But I don't wanna leave, I don't wanna leave. I mean, our president is so immature They're strategizing inside his own White House. Which adult can we send to talk to him to get him to stop throwing a temper tantrum? Anna said this a couple of days ago, but my God, it's never been more right. The right wing who talked about a meltdown for us or any Democrats in 2016. You remember all the memes of like the woman crying in the streets, like go, and then they would put that at meltdown. No. This is what a meltdown looks like.
This is a real meltdown.
When you barricade yourself in the White House and you're crying and well, to be fair, they didn't say crying, I'm saying crying. But you're so despondent and you're detached from reality, and they have to send your grown adult daughter to talk you down. They say, Donnie, we might have to leave at some point, okay? And so that's the conversation we're having now. That's a meltdown.
It's amazing.
Okay, guys, we have so many more stories for you guys, including, and we're gonna go today. Normally we go to the post game. No, because of the election, we're gonna keep on going. Thank you to all the members that make our extra coverage possible for everyone. You can hit the join button below on YouTube to become a member and make that possible. Normally in the post games, if you sign up at the essentials level, you get those. At the premium level, you get all of our videos and all of our shows. And thank you to everybody who signed up anywhere else at tyt.com/join. And guys, don't forget, we're doing that fundraising drive that is so important and critical to us, tyt.com/go. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to give you all this coverage throughout this week, and we're gonna keep it going, obviously. And if it stretches into the weekend, God help me, I'll have to do it during the weekend, and we'll be back and on the air constantly doing it because of the members and because of tyt.com/go. But we are gonna come back free and available to everyone, and when we return, one of the greatest quotes I've seen from politics is from a Democrat. You'll love it. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.